Now, when it comes to jobs, the Treasury Secretary of the United States says infrastructure investment and promoting U.S. products overseas are key to adding more workers to American payrolls. That's what Timothy Geithner told NBR's Darren Gersh in an exclusive interview in Fort Worth, Texas yesterday. Darren also asked the Secretary about why the Obama administration is focused on corporate tax reform when several income tax provisions, like the payroll tax cut, are due to expire at the end of the year.
Both are exceptionally important, and that tax reform is going to have to come because the tax system we have today is really unfair, and it makes us less strong, less competitive as a country, and you need to work on both together. You're right. Now, the President, of course, has laid out a whole range of proposals on the individual side to help make sure that we protect middle-class Americans, and we ask the most fortunate 2% of Americans to bear a somewhat larger burden of what the country needs. On the corporate side, what we think we need to do is clean up all the loopholes, help lower the rate so it can be more competitive, help make it easy for small businesses to operate in this environment.
Here at BNSF Railway, a lot of their customers have them ship parts that are then exported overseas, and the companies that assemble them overseas put them together overseas and sell them overseas. But your corporate tax reform would require those companies to pay a minimum foreign tax. The companies are saying that'll make them less competitive overseas.
Well, what we want to do is lower the overall rate by cleaning up and reducing this huge amount of loopholes across the system, and that'll make the system more fair for companies, and it'll make the investments incentives stronger in this country. Now, as part of that, we got to be careful we're not creating new opportunities and incentives for people to shift jobs, investment, income outside the United States. So we think a important principle for reform should be that all companies pay a minimum tax on their worldwide income, so they're not. You don't see, again, more powerful incentives for companies to shift jobs outside the United States. That's very important.
The argument comes back from companies, and they say, look, if we're more competitive overseas, we'll also be more competitive here at home. We'll invest more here at home. So don't put a minimum tax on us overseas.
Of course, we've heard all those concerns, and these are things we're going to work through. But even the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, Dave Camp, in his broad outlines of corporate tax reform, said that Congress should consider as an option a minimum tax like that. And he's doing it as a Republican for the same reason we're concerned, because we kind of want to say, as we do reform, we don't want a tax code that creates incentives to move that stuff offshore.
On the deficit issue, back in Washington, the policy wonks all say that the key issue is to get Medicare spending and Social Security spending under control if we want to get our deficit and debt under control. But when I go around the country or to places like Fort Worth and you ask people, they say that Medicare and Social Security aren't the problem. So how do you deal with our deficit when you have that disconnect between what the policy experts are saying and what people are actually saying about this problem?
Well, you're right that the biggest drivers of our long-term deficits are the fact that more Americans are retiring and the price of health care is rising as we discover new technologies for helping extend life. Those are the biggest drivers of the long-term growth in government costs. They vastly dominate and overwhelm the rest of what people think of as government in that context. And if we're going to eventually address those long-term deficits, then you have to get both sides to come together and think about ways to make those commitments to retirement security, to healthcare security for retirees, make those sustainable and affordable over time. And those are going to probably have to be accompanied by the broader set of tax reforms that you and I were just discussing. I think the core thing for people to understand is that we can't put off forever addressing those long-term deficits. We have to do it so we make sure we're helping future growth. We create room, preserve room for investing in things we need, like infrastructure and education and innovation. And it's also very important for people to realize that there's no realistic way of restoring gravity to those long-term deficits without tax reform that helps generate a bit more revenues for the economy as a whole. Not realistic to do, not possible to do, and not credible for people to offer Americans a path through that without tax reform that helps raise revenues.
Treasury Secretary Timothy Geithner, thank you for your time.
Good to talk to you.